Try to stay a little closer to the mic this time. Not that close. G'day guys, Willie here, and welcome to a very special first episode of Willy's Tasting Room. That sounds really dirty, but get your head out of the gutter. This is about craft beer. Because this is the first episode, I'm going to go into a little bit of detail about how I rate beer, what I look for in beer, and also a little bit of information about New Zealand craft beer. Also, because it's the first episode, I'm going to rate not one, but 3 beers. So it might get messy. If you're not too keen on listening to me ramble about beer for a few minutes, you can click here to skip ahead to a summary of my rating system, or here to skip ahead to the reviews. Ooh, a little bit of books off the bookshelf. So what exactly makes a craft beer craft? Well, that's a question that's getting harder and harder to answer, but luckily for me, I have an excellent book here, which is going to help me out. If you're a beer enthusiast who lives in New Zealand, I highly recommend it. It's got just about every New Zealand brewery in here, and a bunch of other helpful stuff too. It's called Brewed by Jules van Cruysen. It retails for about $40. It's a good coffee table book, if nothing else. Traditionally, the term craft beer refers to beer brewed in breweries smaller than the industrial ones. These breweries are more focused on high quality products, whereas the larger ones would typically be more worried about cost effectiveness. These micro breweries, as they're sometimes known, use traditional ingredients and traditional methods. Any extra ingredients are added purely for flavour. With the bigger breweries, you sometimes get things like preservatives added. None of that in craft brewing. Lately, however, the distinction between regular beer and craft beer has become a lot more blurred, and that's a phenomenon known as craft washing. What that means is that the larger breweries have caught on to the craft beer movement and have started doing 2 things: creating craft-like products and buying out smaller, already established breweries. So you get interesting hybrids on the market, which I would call semi-craft beers. I don't think that those kind of beers are necessarily a bad thing. If anything, they act as a sort of gateway to heavier craft beers for those with less experience. Semi-craft beers are what got me into beer in the first place. However, it can be a bit of a bad thing because the larger breweries have the monetary incentive to offer to pubs so that they only stock their beer. As Jules van Cruysen says, it's a double-edged sword. Most of the time, though, the big breweries leave the smaller breweries intact after buying them, as in the case of Emerson's or Monteith's, who were both bought out by DB. If you know, DB stands for something's beginning with D Breweries. What you get from that is quality craft beer, which now has the reach of the more popular brews, but has sacrificed none of the class it started with. On the other end of the scale, you have beers like Max. Now, Max Breweries was bought out by Lion Breweries a wee while ago, and the general consensus of the beer drinking public is that the quality has gone a long way downhill. So, with that said, how does one rate craft beer? Now, I have a few points to make about rating beer, but ultimately, it comes down to your personal preference. Big surprise. Big surprise, it comes down to your preference. Big surprise, when rating beer, it's about what you like. There are so many kinds of beer, so there's bound to be 1 or 2 you're not too fond of. For me, it's sour beers and spiced ales. I just can't stand them. I can go on about the malts and the hops and the fruity undertones, but at the end of the day, if I don't enjoy it, it's ultimately going to get a lower rating. I'll touch on this again in a second. I've had a hunt around a few beer rating websites, and the general consensus is that there are 5 things to take into consideration when rating a beer. Once again, I'd like to thank Jules van Cruysen for his input on this. This is actually a really good reference. Number 1, appearance. This might not seem that important, but first impressions are everything. Do you want another cliche? I can give you another cliche. Don't hatchet your counts before they chicken. You want to see the colour. Is it golden, brown, black, amber? The clarity. Is it cloudy? Is it clear? Are there bits in it? What's the head like? Later on, you'll want to examine the lacing, which are the little rings the beer leaves down the glass as you drink it. I rate appearance out of 5. Number 2, the smell. I mean, get your nose in there and get a good whiff. Just keep in mind that nothing you think you can smell is wrong. Everyone's nose is different, and detecting exact smells is not an easy skill to learn. I sure as hell have not mastered that aspect of tasting. You'll want to try and figure out which element of the beer is coming through the most strongly, the hops, the malt, the yeast, or some other element. It actually helps if you swirl the glass a little, like a Ponzi wine taster. This will stimulate carbonation, or fizzing, and bring out some aromas which are harder to detect. Then try to pinpoint exactly what it is you're smelling. For example, if it's the malts, is it chocolatey, nutty, smoky? For hops, it might be fruity or floral or spicy. Then try to go a bit deeper.
Let's try to go a bit deeper.
If it's fruity, what kind of fruit is it? Dark fruit, stone fruit, berries. You can go deeper and deeper and
Deeper.
until you can figure out the profile of the hops or the malt just from a single smell. I rate smell out of 10. Number 3, the taste. Now this is, in my opinion, easily the most important aspect of a beer. It's going in your mouth after all. So get a bit in your mouth, not too much, you alky, and swirl it around so that it touches everywhere inside your mouth. You want to consider all of the flavor groups, but most of the time it's going to be sweet or bitter. The trick is to figure out how the flavor profile changes over time. It might be super sweet to begin with, but have a bitter finish, or it might mellow over time. You'll also want to note how the aroma translates to the taste. Did it taste how you expected, or did a flavor come out that surprised you? As well as all that, you'll want to try and figure out whether the flavor was balanced. By that I mean, did one particular flavor overpower the others, or was it quite well put together? It's all very well having a stout, for example, with chocolatey notes, but if it tastes too much like chocolate, well, then you may as well just go get a chocolate milk. Put vodka in it. Sounds pretty good, actually. This is one you need to feel out for yourself. Like I said, not everyone's opinions are the same. I rate taste out of 20. Number 4, mouthfeel, or the palate sensation for the Persh. How does it feel in your mouth and on your tongue? Is it too carbonated? Is it rich? Is it smooth? Is it watery? You'll want to dedicate a sip or two to just having the beer in your mouth and letting it roll around and seeing how it feels. I rate mouthfeel out of 5. Number 5, overall experience. Now, this is a summary of everything you've experienced so far. How did it all fit together? Did you enjoy it? Or what didn't you enjoy about it? I found that it can be quite hard to be completely impartial when trying to be a beer critic, so this is a good opportunity for your honest opinion. The beer may or may not be objectively good, but that doesn't mean you can't enjoy it. And the opposite holds true too. Now, I rate overall experience out of 10, but you'll find some websites, like ratebeer.com, that rate overall experience out of 20 and taste out of 10. Now, I disagree with this because I feel like it gives too much weight to opinion and not enough to actual quality. So all this will give you an overall score out of 50. Now, I like to use the New Zealand University grading scale, with 50% being a pass and 90% being an A+. In my opinion, if you can finish a beer and not throw up due to the taste, then it's a pass. You'll find very few beers that I review failing, and rightly so, because no beer should be wasted. I've written down, you won't find many beers that are 50 out of 50, but reading it back it looks like, you won't find many beers that are 50-50. You will find plenty of beers that are 50-50. It's fine not to be sure about something, but you won't find many beers that are a perfect 50 out of 50. Now this, I don't think that any beer should be given a perfect rating, because that's the ultimate goal. Once you find the 50 out of 50 beer, you should probably just drop down dead, because you're never going to be happier than that. Right, now that I've got that out of the way, let's get started. I need to go get my beers from the fridge. BRB.